Hello, friends, and thank you for joining me on this daily connection. We want to get into the Word so that, you guessed it, the Word gets into us. We're looking today at Acts chapter 16. There's a lot going on there, some things that should definitely bring us encouragement and probably serve as a reminder that as we carry out the Great Commission, there will certainly be times when we're just in a general fashion approaching people with the gospel. There's also going to be times when God sets up a divine appointment. I want you to keep that in mind as we read verses 6 through 10, which tell us that's Paul, Silas, and his companions, went through the region of Phrygia and Galatia. They had been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. When they came to Mysia, they tried to go into Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. Passing by Mysia, they went down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision in which a Macedonian man was standing and pleading with him, "Cross over to Macedonia and help us." After he had seen the vision, we immediately made efforts to set out from Macedonia, concluding that God had called us to preach the gospel to them. So we're picking back up with this second missionary journey. Now, Paul and Barnabas had their disagreement. Barnabas and John Mark head one direction. Paul and Silas head another direction. They've actually picked up Timothy now, who will eventually be called Paul's son of faith. And they're going more in that northwest direction. In terms of that Asian area. And we're told that there's two different times whenever they are forbidden to go into a certain region. First time is in verse 6, where it says they're forbidden to go into Asia proper, which meant they were probably trying to head east. Holy Spirit wouldn't allow that, so they came down to Mysia. Then they tried to go to Bithynia, which is more of a northerly direction. Again, it says the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. So two times they are forbidden to go in what they thought would just be a logical direction in terms of preaching the gospel, planting churches, doing exactly what they've been commissioned to do. And in the midst of all that, they come to a place where Paul has a vision. He has a dream in the night, and a Macedonian man standing, pleading with him, calling for him to come over. And verse 11 says this, immediately. I love the urgency there. That's a Mark word. But here we see Luke saying, hey, immediately we made our efforts to set sail. And do you notice what he said next? Concluding that God had called us to preach the gospel to them. In other words, they saw this as a divine appointment. And we think about an appointment. We think about it being in a specific place at a specific time, maybe to see a specific person and deal with a specific issue. There's a lot of specificity in an appointment. The first one is your time. You've got to be there at a certain time. The other one is the location. You're probably going to a specific location. And then the person, you're probably going to see a specific person, whether it's your CPA to get your taxes done, the dentist to get your teeth cleaned, or maybe you're going to the doctor just to get a checkup or to figure out what in the world is wrong with me. But the idea of appointment is very familiar with us. Well, Paul and his companions, Silas, Timothy, and who knows who else was with them, Luke, had a divine appointment. And it's funny because if you keep reading, they go to Philippi, and the first thing you notice is what's not at Philippi. Typically, it was their pattern on the Sabbath, and that's what it says on the Sabbath, to find a synagogue and worship with the local Jews and use that as an avenue to begin presenting the gospel. But the text says that on the first Sabbath day, they went to a location outside the town, right down near the creek, for prayer, which was common in areas where you didn't have a Jewish presence and there maybe wasn't a strong presence of a different worldview, that people thought of riverbeds and places located near moving streams as somewhat spiritual in nature, that the gods resided there. And so they would build places of prayer there. And Paul knew that, of course, and as well as his companions. And so the first thing we notice is that at this location that they were appointed to go to, there's not enough Jewish males, 10, to constitute a synagogue. If you're going into this situation, you're looking for markers of affirmation, that's not one of them. You're thinking, man, what's up with this, God? You brought me here? There's not even enough Jews to constitute a synagogue. So these people don't even have the foundation of the law that I can work out of. But we know that in going to this place of prayer, they meet a lady named Lydia, a seller of purple. They preach the gospel to her. They share the gospel to her. She's saved. Her whole household is saved. Is saved, and she's obviously a woman of means and influence because through her, much of Paul's ministry takes place in terms of financing it, supporting the church. But it wasn't just that. Later on, Paul and Silas get arrested, and again, in that jail is a divine appointment because they encounter the Philippian jailer, who they then lead to Christ and his old household. Guess what I'm saying is this. There's going to be times when God is going to inspire upon us, impress upon us a divine appointment. And in that, we don't need to think that that means there's not going to be any obstacles to overcome, any barriers to break down. That's not what that means. What that means is God has appointed this time, this place, this person for one purpose, for you to share the gospel, for you to present the good news of who Jesus is, what he's done, what difference that makes in our life, and why we need that good news. And we just trust God with that. Whether it's 1 or 100, that doesn't matter. A divine appointment is just that. It's an appointment that God has set and that we are then blessed to keep. So what about you, friend? Has God impressed upon you a divine appointment? Has he set in your heart and on your heart and in your mind a certain individual at work or a certain member of your community, and he's impressing the desire and the need to go and visit with that individual, and as you're with them, you know you're there for a gospel purpose? Then hey, just as Paul and Silas and Timothy and the companions, obeyed God when he said they couldn't go into Asia, they couldn't go into Bithynia, and yet when God prompted them to Philippi, they went. Macedonia, they went. That's the same way we got to be. We got to be sensitive to where God is, what God is prompting us to. We got to be submissive to his will, and then we got to be saturated with his spirit. And when we do that, friends, we're then in a position to live sent.